All right, Disruptors, I've got a very special guest today from Asheville, North Carolina. She's the chair of the National Speakers Association. She's a motivational speaker, does about 80 speeches across the United States every year on the volume of books that she has authored. And today she's going to talk about one of her newest book. So I want to introduce you to Meridith Powell. Meridith, I want to welcome you to Close the Deal podcast.
I'm looking forward to being here. Excited about it, Yul.
Yes. So quick, I want to ask you, what is the okay? So first of all, before we dive into this, the name of the book is called Thrive.
Yes.
It's about facing challenges, and you're in Asheville, North Carolina, one of my favorite cities. My wife is from South Carolina, so we go to Asheville on a regular basis. And it was heartbreaking watching what had happened coming from New Orleans, and having kind of gone through what we have gone through. We could feel the pain from a distance. How are you all doing? And
Yeah.
resiliency of Asheville. We know you're going to come back. I love you.
Yeah. I would say that, I mean, Asheville's kind of amazing. The people here are amazing. The resiliency of the people. But if I have to be honest, and I guess you can relate to this coming from New Orleans, it's still really bad. I
Yeah.
mean, it just got up to 30 degrees here and it's daytime, which means that people slept in tents last night
Wow.
down in the teens. And so it's still very challenging. And I was with a few bankers yesterday. We were going through how just hard hit the business community's been. I mean, we lost wheat season. Now we're into the hardest. I mean, imagine, 6 months, your business has no revenue.
Yeah.
Just it's challenging, but Asheville will come back. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so many good people are giving so much.
It's the volunteers and the people coming in to help that put us back on their feet. And I can say this with confidence, having gone through this, dealing with it with not just the city laws, but the seafood industry, which I was a part of. You know, you will come back stronger. And Asheville's such a great place. People want to support the town. I believe the Biltmore, it has
Yes.
reopened correctly.
It's open for Christmas. Biltmore Village is really completely destroyed, but
Oh,
the
wow.
Biltmore Estate is open, which is bringing, revenue back in, to the economy. So slowly things are coming back. There are parts of Asheville that are fine. I mean, if you care about the community, it's a great time to come. The
I love it.
restaurants need you. The shops need you. Buy Asheville this year. Look online. It's one of the greatest ways to support.
That is the message right there,
Yeah.
because that's the message we beat the drum on over and
Yeah.
over. And
I mean,
glad this.
you're gonna buy holiday gifts anyway.
Yes,
Why not do it in a way that helps people who really need it?
that's fantastic. All right. So let's get into the challenge. Besides overcoming Helene, what's the greatest challenge you face getting going in your business with what you do? And how do you overcome
Gosh,
that?
the biggest challenge I face really getting going in my business is I really think that the biggest challenge I faced was learning to really ask for help.
Mhm.
My business has evolved. I'm not one of those people who decided what she was going to be when she grew up. And,
Mhm.
like we were talking, your dad was a dentist, or
Mhm.
people decide they want to be a doctor or an attorney or anything like
Mhm.
that. My business it just kept evolving. I didn't set out to be a motivational speaker. It wasn't really
Wow.
how I started. But when I look at the challenges, I think it was fundamentally I didn't have any business training. I didn't have any business background. I didn't know how to run a business. And I needed help and I needed education and I needed to learn. And I waited far too long to realize that asking for help was a strength
Yeah.
rather than a weakness. One of my biggest failures, I reached out to a mentor of mine and she
Mhm.
said, if you're going to make it in this business, you're going to need to learn to toughen your skin because it is going
Yeah.
to get much rougher than this. So I
Yeah.
think that about business and I think that about life is that life is challenging and hard. It's about getting through it. It's not about what happened to you.
That's true. The spark, what was the spark that triggered you to say, okay, I am going to become a motivational speaker? How did that come about?
Yeah, I wish there had been a spark. I don't roll like that. I
Okay.
am somebody who moves before she thinks.
Ah, okay.
And that's not always a good thing. But literally, I started my business when I was 40 years old, so a little bit late in today's standard.
Hmm.
And I started out as a business strategist. I was writing strategies for companies because that's what I had done in corporate America.
Hmm.
And the businesses I worked with had done really well. They had really seen exponential growth. And somebody said, "Would you talk to our Rotary Club? Would you talk to our Kiwanis Club? Tell us how you did it." I was so happy to share the message. And then somebody tapped me on the shoulder, I'm sure now because I was a terrible speaker, and said, "You should think about joining the National Speakers Association." And I didn't even know this career existed. And let me tell
Wow.
you why I think this is important is because I'm having this conversation with my nephew right now. He's not sure what he wants to do in life. He's barely 30 years old and trying to decide what he wants to do next. He's done had a great run with his company, but he's as high as he can go. And I said to him, I said, the problem is you're waiting for the right answer rather
Mm,
than just doing something. If I had never, started my own business and I have never started as a strategist, if I never said I'll speak to the Rotary Club, I've never known what I want to do. I
mhm.
don't even know if this is what I want to do, but everything is leading to something else. And and I think that's the importance in life. I think so many people get stuck because we're waiting for everything to be perfect rather than just moving to the next step.
Agree 100%. And I fell into that trap, but I kept trying. I kept trying until I finally landed into what I really enjoyed doing.
Yeah,
And I think that's an important piece too, because I was pursuing the money at a young age. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
sure.
And then my wife finally asked me, I had an ulcer my first job, that job we talked about before the show. I had an ulcer, my only ulcer I've ever had, because I was in the wrong job. Great people,
Yeah.
wrong job around me. Amazing people around me, but it was the wrong job. And that's when my wife, then girlfriend, she said, you need to figure out what it is you at least enjoy doing. You know, find out what you love to do, you really enjoy it. So I was very fortunate to figure that out. Okay, so let's start transition a little bit because this all leads to your books. Your books was it. I can't wait to dive into that. But before we get there, you're in Asheville. Let's say you have a client coming to town. Where I want to help promote your favorite restaurant in town to
Oh,
bring
I'd
some
love that.
business. Where would you take your clients to eat dinner or breakfast or lunch to do business?
Yeah, it's a little restaurant on Tunnel Road. It's kind of like a locals place. The food
That's
is
the best.
phenomenal, but what really makes it is the staff. But my favorite bar none is a little restaurant called Copper Crown in Asheville, North Carolina. Food
I
is
love.
amazing, the staff is amazing, the whole vibe is amazing. And I would definitely take a client there.
Do you have a favorite dish there?
Yeah, yeah, I eat the scallops, but they're famous for their Brussels sprouts.
Okay, I love it. Oh, I gotta bring my wife. That's
Yeah.
one of her favorite things. Okay.
Yeah, well, there you need to bring her, they're amazing.
Um, and then along this journey, who or what are you grateful for that helped you get you where to this point? Because you did take some steps, and you mentioned one person. Is
Yeah,
that the
oh my
yeah.
god, I'm grateful for so many people in my life, but if I had to really nail it down to one, it would bar none be my mother,
Ah,
and the reason for that is that like a lot of people, I come from a pretty dysfunctional, family. I'm the youngest of 4 kids. All the men in my family all died of alcoholism. My dad,
oh,
my 4
wow.
brothers, my first husband, everything. But my mother really taught me from a young age, getting through that life isn't fair and
Mhm.
you need to buck up and you need to get yourself through. She never allowed us to make excuses. She never allowed us to whine, and she never
Wow.
allowed us to feel sorry for ourselves. Her motto is pretty much, "This is the hand you're dealt. Deal with it."
Mhm.
And I am so grateful for those lessons. They have carried me through where I watched others around me allow valid reasons to prevent them from growing. I didn't think I was allowed to make them an excuse.
Mm. Yeah, you remind me of my wife in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
She's got that tenacity, that grit, and she grew up dirt poor in South Carolina on the wrong side of
Yeah.
the tracks, and she got out of a small town, and she worked her way to New Orleans, won scholarships, and made a life for herself, and then that's how
Yeah.
and we met in grad school, but that she's been the better part of my half, my
Yeah.
half to help me grow as a person, which I'm very grateful for. Um, let's dive into, okay, so you start writing books.
Yeah.
Now, you worked in the corporate world for a while. You started at the age of 40 writing books, is that right? Or
Right.
speaking, and then the books followed?
Yes.
Okay, so when you wrote your first book, talk to me about that. I'm just curious because I've written 2 books. And the first book, even though I know how to do promotions and marketing my whole life, when it came to promoting my first book, the imposter syndrome actually hit me. I'm like, "Oh, that's what this is about."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, calling question. The second book, I've had no problem promoting. The
Yeah.
first book, it was so what was the mental part to say, "Okay, I'm gonna write a
Yeah.
book about
I
this."
was so, like so many things in my life, I was so lucky with my first book. I told you I tend to move before I think. So there wasn't a lot of thought to writing a book. I mean, somebody says you should write a book. And I said, okay. Well, I found this fabulous editor and she said, have you ever written a book? And I said, no. And she said, then we're going to do it my way. And I was like, great. And so she said, what do you want to write a book about? And I'm like, I have no idea. And she said, what do people ask you about the most? And at that time in my life, I just started my career. I was mostly in sales. People were asking me how to turn a prospect into a customer and how to turn a customer into an advocate.
Mm.
And I said, that's what I want to write about. I want to write the step by step. She said, great. So she gave me a methodology on how to write a book. And it was so reader focused. And I tell you all that because then when it came to promoting the book, it was so easy because I didn't feel like any of that book was about me. It was about the
Yeah,
fact that people had asked me for help and I had a way to help them. It was
I
like
love
I
that.
was answering the same question over and over again to people. Now I could put it in a book and I could go, oh, are you stuck? Here you go. And so it was just such a different mindset for me.
That's so interesting you said that because the first book I think I wrote was by me.
Yes.
And the second book literally is I became a franchise consultant.
Uh-huh.
And all the questions I kept getting asked is how I wrote the book. It was easy
Yeah.
to write. And then it's easy to promote because it answers the questions. I don't have to,
Yeah.
I could give the book. Here, take a read. If you like what you
Yeah.
read. And then so you were able to take that and then what okay, so then you write the first book. You have a home run the first book, which is rare. Very rare. How how many books have you written so far?
I'm at 10 right now. I've got the 11th coming out next year. Now, let me tell you that the only reason I think my book was a home run
Uh,
was because the book was 100% focused on helping other people. And
yes.
I think what you said is so true. I think so often we write books because we want to tell our story or we want
Yeah.
to whatever. And I think that's why I think I was so blessed to find that editor who just was like, no, we're doing it my way. And she taught me the way that makes it comfortable as an author. But here's the reason I've written 10 books is not because I'm a great writer or an author, was because I learned with the first book how much a book raises your confidence. When
Uh-huh.
people asked me before I wrote the book how to turn a prospect into a customer, I kind of knew. But the moment you title a book that and you
Yeah.
decide to write chapters, you have to be so sure of what you think, why you think it, and be able to relay it in a book and commit to it, that then talking becomes really easy. So I would write books if I was the only one who read them because it's like a way of going to school for
It's
me and getting
therapeutic.
better
I
at
find
what
it
I
therapeutic.
do. Yeah. It's
I mean,
very, very therapeutic. In fact, when my last brother passed away from alcoholism, I called my sister and I said, I know that we should be like mourning right now, but there's no way that 6 male members of our family have died from alcoholism. And
wow.
we're supposed to tell a message.
Yeah.
And so my sister and I wrote a book about it. And the book's been sold all over the world, helped people all over the world. But the book was therapeutic for us.
Yeah.
We wrote our feelings through, our solutions of how to navigate, our solutions. And every book feels that way to me. I mean, the
That's
reason I wrote
amazing.
Thrive and Turning Uncertainty to Competitive Advantage is I was struggling. And
Yeah.
I needed answers. So I wrote that all out.
So yeah, and I want to dive into that book and pull out a few nuggets from that book because that's your latest book, correct?
Yeah.
So I want to share with them one more thing. I wrote the first book. I got the bug, and I
Yeah.
knew I was going to write a second book, and I started writing that, and that one is going to be. I ended up leapfrogging and doing a different book on franchising because that became my business, and I fell in love with the writing process. And but now I've got the third book halfway written, and I got a fourth one. I know what I want to write about. So
Yeah.
it becomes
A bug.
addictive because you do feel like you're helping people and serving, and then it gives you a platform to speak to, which is what
Yeah.
you built a business around that, speaking at 80 businesses or conferences a year. That's
Yeah.
that's growth. All right, your book called Thrive is very timely. It's written for business people before Katrina, before Helene.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure there's elements that probably apply the mindset of
Yeah.
overcoming the challenges of a Helene. Because my mentor said it doesn't matter if it's a category 1 or a category 5. If it hits you directly, it's a category 5.
Yeah.
The storm, and a lot of people feel that way in business. They feel like they're getting hammered, and it's catastrophic to them, and they need to figure out how to survive and then start thriving again. Uh, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your book Thrive, and let's dig a little deeper into it, and then we'll button it up because I think we don't want to give away the whole book. I want you to
Well,
help sell some copy.
I love what you said there because I think that is so important too, is that when it comes to uncertainty, this book, I started it before the global pandemic.
Oh
And
wow,
it doesn't have to be uncertainty. There's no judgment around it. It isn't that I've gone through Helene, so my uncertainty is stronger than somebody who just lost their job.
yeah,
Or, so uncertainty has no judgment. And this
hmm
methodology works for everybody, no matter the size. And yes,
hmm
it's for personal. In fact, I love that you said that because when I finished the book, I had it all set to go to the publisher. And I was like, wait a minute. The Great Depression didn't end at 5 o'clock. These people had to go home at night and deal with the Great Depression in
hmm
their personal lives. So the last chapter of the book is how to apply the methodology to your personal life.
hmm
So the reason I wrote the book, the whole purpose and my mission in life now, is that I wrote the book because back in 2016, when the economy was running hot, everybody was saying, we're having our best year on record, but oh, this uncertainty. And I thought, why does uncertainty always have to be negative? And doesn't the
hmm
world blow up every 50 years or so? Can't we go back and see? We've had gas crisis. We've had rapid inflation. We've had wars. We've had, you name it. And very few businesses thrive through it. Most disappear. And
hmm
I wanted to figure out why the ones who thrive through it, were there any themes? Were there any commonalities? Were there any things that I could pick up? So I spent 6 years studying, doing quantitative and qualitative research. And from all that research, I've been able to define a methodology, a literal 9 steps. What I love about these 9 steps is that the biggest problem people have in uncertainty is knowing what to do. They freeze. Even if they
hmm
want to take action, the fear freezes them. And
hmm
this methodology takes all the fear out of it. What I
I
can
love it.
say, just do these 9 things. If you do these 9 things over and over, it's a lifestyle. You'll thrive no matter what.
Mhm. All right, let's unpack. Pick your favorite 2, or
Okay.
what you'd like to talk about. Maybe 3 if there's time. We can do 2, whatever you want to do. And let's unpack a couple of them
Okay.
and see where we go.
Well, all 9 are my favorite, but I'm going to give you a
Okay.
couple of them.
All right.
You get no. I'm going to start with number 1 because you can't go
Okay.
anywhere without number 1.
Okay.
And number 1 is that you need to understand where you're headed and where you're going. I call it a relentless vision. That's the strategy. No, that
hmm
is not a vision. That is not a vision board that is stuck in my bedroom. It is not a vision that is hung on your, break room wall. It is a vision that you are so focused on that when obstacles show up, your mind finds a way to get there. The
hmm
biggest thing that I learned from my research is that success is not logical. You mentioned that your wife grew up dirt poor in South Carolina. If you look at that logically, she should not be successful. The odds were stacked against her. But success isn't logical. Success is a matter of focusing your brain on what you can control and forgetting about the rest. That sounds so simple, but it is not easy because the brain is wired for negativity. It protects us, right? So I call it a relentless vision. And that means like if you got up with me here in Asheville, North Carolina every morning, you would see the very first thing I do is read my vision. It's a little note card. And on that note card is where I see my life, where I see my health, my business, my finances, and my marriage a year from now. It's funny because I had a number on my finances. I wrote it down a couple of years ago. And I would say I would retire when my husband and I hit this number. We were at the financial advisor yesterday, and that was the number we hit. I was
Awesome.
shocked. I couldn't believe we hit it. We were at dinner last night. My husband said, "Are you surprised we've done that well?" I said, "What?" I said, "Sort of." I said, "But not really." I said, "That's the number I've had on my vision. I read it 3 times a day. I read
love
it in the
that.
morning. I read it at lunch. I read it again before I go to bed." And so that I really, if you took nothing else from this podcast, if I could just get the world to quit focusing on what they can't control and focus on what they can, your life will radically change. If you'd have made me when I started researching businesses, and I researched hundreds of them, if you'd have made me guess which ones would still be here, I'd have been so wrong. Because on a piece of paper, the ones that made it shouldn't have made it,
Yeah. Wow.
you know?
Yeah. 100%. Focus on what you can control. There's so many, and the uncertainty piece. I've been through some serious crisis events, led an industry through crisis events, one of them being the BP oil spill when I was head of the seafood industry. And when we came through Katrina with the seafood industry, we knew we would come back because, stuff gets knocked down, boats get destroyed, they rebuild. When the BP oil spill happened, there was so much uncertainty wrapped around it because what does this mean? And for 87 days, that well leaked oil. And halfway through, I'll never forget, one of the famous chefs called me at 6 a.m. I was on the dock down in Venice, very bottom of the state. And the chef called me. I recognized his voice right away. He's like, "Ewell, are we going to have an industry left?" And my candid answer was, "I don't know." But all we could do was face day by day the facts that we could control.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things we could do is take action to take our mind off of reacting, but focus on how can we move forward. And that's exactly what you just described. That's what's important is you describe that for your life.
Yeah.
As a vision every day. Which I find fascinating.
Yeah. And the reason that there's 5 pillars to it is because I'm old enough that when I was growing up, I believed that business and personal were separate. We were told they were completely separate. They're not.
Yeah.
If your health is not right, it will impact your business. If your finances are not straight, it will impact your relationship. Now, you don't need to be perfect in every arena, but what you have to be doing is you have to make progress in every single area.
Yeah.
And know that what you're doing is taking steps in every single area. And
That's a
what
key
you
word. Progress.
Yeah. Progress
is everything. I say progress powers potential.
Yeah.
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 It really
and
does.
confidence is where progress comes. I mean, progress builds confidence. It's not about achieving a goal. It is about, did I get closer to what I want to achieve?
Okay. I love that. We could probably talk an hour just.
Yeah.
What about number 2? What's the next?
Yeah. So I'll just go right into strategy number 2. We'll do 1 and 2. Because I always tell people that I don't want you to think this book is Pollyanna, like cast a vision, we hold hands, we sing Kumbaya, and somehow uncertainty is okay.
Sure.
But
That's not how it works.
Yeah, no. But if your mind is strong enough, you're ready for strategy number 2. And strategy number 2, I love, is it's based on the U.S. military. And if you know anything about the U.S. military, you know that they have a great mantra, and the mantra is embrace the suck.
Mm,
And that's not the strategy, but it's the mantra. The strategy is condition yourself for change. But the idea
mm,
around embrace the suck is that is not the optimist that survives, and it isn't the pessimist. It's the realist. It's the one who goes, you know what, this sucks. I don't like it.
yeah.
But how can I start to work with it and navigate? And the
Hmm.
company that we studied through this, in every chapter, I've got a historical company and I've got a modern example. But the historical one is Jim Beam and
Mm,
how they survived Prohibition. And nobody believed that Prohibition would become law, not Jim Beam or any of his competitors. But Jim Beam was a very different type of leader. And he asked himself a very important question. And it's a question all of us should be asking ourselves. And that is, what if? What would I do if Prohibition became law? And so, even though he didn't believe that would become his reality, he didn't believe that change would come. He got ready anyway. And he bought
mhm.
land in Florida, started growing citrus. He invested in the mining industry. So when Prohibition became law, he was ready. He had enough revenue streams coming in. Every single competitor that Jim Beam had declared bankruptcy.
Wow.
And while they were busy cleaning up the mess their lives and businesses had become, he started asking himself, what if again? What would I do if Prohibition was repealed?
Huh.
And he lined up distributors and investors. And so when Prohibition was repealed, he was back up and running in 120 days, a full year ahead of his closest competitor.
That's a great
So the
story.
power of that is we all know change is coming. Why do we wait for it? Why don't we get ready for change now?
Hmm.
I was funny. We were out to dinner with some friends the other day, and they won't talk about retirement. I'm 61 years old,
Hmm.
and they won't talk about retirement. They're like, no, 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 we're never stopping working. We're never gonna move into a retirement facility or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Whatever, but it's gonna come. And then you're gonna end up being a burden on your kids and it's gonna be a mess. I mean, you can't, some change sucks and you cannot stop it. But if you
Hmm.
prepare for it, you will navigate through it beautifully.
Yes.
And your greatest opportunity could be on the other side.
I man, change is coming and the challenges come with it, and you have to run
Yes.
towards those challenges.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And
Yeah.
and face them head on.
Yeah. I've got a really good, my best friend in the world has six children. And you can imagine her entire life was spent raising six kids. And her husband was a golf course designer, was constantly gone traveling. She didn't play golf because she didn't have time to comb her hair, you
Yeah.
know? And when her youngest son was in high school, she started to play golf. And nobody could believe she was starting to play golf because her husband had tried to get her to play for years. But she said to me, and I love this, it's about conditioning yourself. And she said, Meredith, I don't like golf. I don't want to play golf, but my youngest son is graduating from school. I'm about to be in a house with just me and my husband. And the only thing he does is play golf and
It's
loves
a,
it. If I don't learn to play, we're not going to have anything to talk about. I think it is one of the most, now she's a nut. She's a fanatic. I
I
mean,
love.
she's a way bigger golfer than he ever was. But my point is, she saw the change coming and she got ready.
Wow.
You
I
know,
love it. Yeah. I love it.
rather than sitting there with no kids in the house and
Mhm.
nothing in common,
Yeah.
you know?
It's the and the relentless vision
Yeah.
helps you power through those moments, right?
Yes. It,
To
it is,
adapt to change.
it is unbelievable how that relentless vision, it pops an intrinsic motivation because it
Hmm.
helps you go, I don't like this, but let me power through it.
Yeah, you've got me fired up. All right.
Yeah.
Um, Let me ask you an interesting question, then we'll button it up, where
Yeah.
people can find your book and get in touch with you and so forth. If if there was one thing you could have done differently, what would that have been? And how do you coach people to that?
If there was one thing that I could have done, oh my God, there's a million things that I could have done differently. But the biggest is I would have gotten my ego out of the way. I was so insecure in my 20s and my 30s, and I really tried to cover that up, and that prevented me from um, taking advantage of relationships that could have benefited me,
Yep.
opening doors or taking chances, and the insecurity prevented me from wanting to fail. I always
Yeah.
had to be the smartest person in the room. I wasn't listening. I wasn't
Yeah.
um I wasn't humble, and
I'm guilty of the
vulnerability and
same.
humbleness, they're huge, and they cost me years in,
Yeah.
they cost me years of my business. The other mistake I made was, and I think this is a byproduct of it, it took me too long to find my voice and to
Mm,
ask for what I wanted. I was
wow.
typical young female. I was very passive aggressive. If I worked hard, I thought people should notice. And when they
Hmm.
didn't, I became passive aggressive, and I was kind of my own worst enemy
Hmm.
in the beginning. So I didn't really hit I didn't really hit my wake up call until about 36 or 37.
Wow. That's amazing. That's a testament right there. Because a lot of people, people want. I mean, coming out of high school and college, I thought, man, I'm going to be a business person right out the gate and be successful. And I didn't know what the heck was going on until
Yeah.
about 29. And then my career started going, and
Yes.
then I found my footing, and I had an incredible run. But it took a long time for me to figure that out. And then there's people like my wife who hadn't figured it, like
Yeah.
I didn't figure that.
Yeah.
But
I was not one of those people.
yeah. All right. Where can people find you for your speaking engagements and your book?
Well, I am a big believer in build your network. It will change your life. So if you connect with me, I will connect with you. But you can find me. I tend to live on LinkedIn more
Yeah.
than anywhere else. But
Yep.
also reach out to me on my website, just the words valuespeaker.com, just the words valuespeaker.com.
Hmm.
And I write a lot, I shoot a lot of videos, but I find my ideas from engaging with people. So it's a benefit to me if you reach out to me.
I love it. Barry, this has been fantastic. The best part about podcasting is the conversations
Oh,
before and
I
after.
agree. You
I
learn
talk
so
about
much.
I talk about that all the time. And so I'm looking forward to our post conversation. And then, and I want to thank you for this time because you got me motivated. I love that mindset. I love that energy. And I know that the truth. And I'm going to have to read the other 7
Yeah.
uh, points that you have from your book called
Okay.
Thrive. So thank you
That's
for
right.
your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
And that is a wrap with Meredith. And, she started writing her book years ago, long before there was a Hurricane Helene to unexpectedly hit a mountain town. Who would have guessed? Who would have thought? And, obviously the mindset piece is critical for business, for life, and even for a hurricane. And everybody's going to face a hurricane, whether it's a physical storm or it's some sort of mental challenge. And being prepared for that is key. And it doesn't matter if it's a category 1 or a category 5 hurricane that hits you. It's going to feel like a category 5 that hits you. So you want to be mentally prepared for that. And I want to make an appeal to you for being here this long with me on the show. First of all, thank you for doing that, being part of our community. Secondly, the appeal is this: anything you can do to support Asheville, please do. Donations, making a trip there would be huge. Whether it's sometime in the spring or the summer, giving you time to plan that, because having gone through that in New Orleans with Hurricane Katrina, I still live here, and I was also head of the seafood industry during that time in Louisiana, and it took everything and everybody in the community from around the United States and the world, for that matter, to provide the support. And without that support, it's really difficult. I don't know that we would have come out of it. Asheville is in that same spot right now. They've got a road to hope. They've got a long road ahead of them still. So those types of investments, whether it's donations or whether it's buying products from their community, finding the businesses online, or whether it's literally making a trip there, those things really do matter. And I cannot tell you how a beautiful, if you've not been to Asheville, it is a beautiful town, and the mountains around it is just gorgeous. So it's worth the trip there. I love Asheville, and God bless them on their recovery. And thank you for being part of our community. And my last thing is my book. You know that. I've got my brand new book, Your First Franchise Roadmap. I'd like to gift you a copy. Just check out yourfirstfranchise.com, and I'll send you a copy right away. Now, you know the drill. Be intentional and make today a great day. Bye-bye.